6 o'clock, if we can go ahead and call this meeting to order. We will have our invocation and pledge of allegiance. Councilmember Wells has agreed to do the invocation, and we'll follow that by our pledge of allegiance.
Father God, thank you so much for the city of Central and for each representative here tonight that serves our city, Lord. Lord, we thank you for your protection and just for your hand over our conservative city who just loves you and loves that we can have a community that can worship you and pray before a meeting. Lord, for the next 2 weeks, it'll be an election cycle, but we just ask that we continue to speak positive of the things that everyone has done over the last 4 years and just keep it without any negative slandering campaign. We thank you for each officer that serves in our city, and we just ask that you bless this meeting tonight. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. You may be seated. All right, roll call, please.
Evans?
Here.
Cornell?
Here.
Lansborough?
Here.
McKinney?
Here.
Meyer?
Here.
Roy?
Here.
Wells?
Here.
All right, approval of the minutes from the October 11th, 2022 council meeting. We have a motion by Councilmember McKinney, seconded, I think Meyer beat Lazarus. All right, by Meyer. Any objections? All right, seeing none. Since we have a number of new faces here tonight, I am going to briefly read through the rules at the top of your agenda so that everybody will understand. So bear with me for just a minute. In view of the many items appearing on the agenda, each council member will be allowed a maximum of 5 minutes to express his or her views on any one subject without interruption from the other members upon initial consideration, and 5 minutes for rebuttal. Each council member will also be allowed 2 minutes to express additional views and 2 minutes for rebuttal during a final consideration period after the time for public comment has been closed. No council member will speak until recognized by the chair. In compliance with Revised Statute 4214D, members of the public will be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes following the period of initial consideration and rebuttal on any item included on the agenda on which the council proposes to take action. A member of the public who wishes to speak on an agenda item on which the council proposes to take action shall print his or her name and address on the register at the podium prior to addressing the council. No member of the public shall address the council until recognized by the chair. Each member of the public who addresses the council shall state his or her name and address for the record prior to making any comment. So those are our rules. You will have 3 minutes to speak per item when called for the public hearing. I do want to, before we go into zoning, I do want to take an item out of order so that we don't keep them here all night. Sheriff Gautreaux is here to address us and the citizens of the parish. So council members, unless there's any objections, I'd like to yield to the sheriff and let him talk about something important coming up. So, Sheriff.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, members of the council. I appreciate y'all giving me the opportunity to be here tonight and speak with you briefly about something that is of utmost importance, not only to the sheriff's office, but to all of men and women and children who live in East Baton Rouge Parish. Sheriff's office is funded primarily by 3 bonds, property bonds. One is permanent, the other 2 are renewable every 10 years, and we have one coming up this year that we have on the ballot for December the 10th. Those 3 millages equate to about 75% of our annual operating budget, and that fluctuates a little bit just on property values as property values fluctuate. The other 25% or so of our budget comes from fines, fees, collections, and so forth and so on. But we don't get a penny from sales tax. Most sheriff's offices don't. I think there's 6 in the state of Louisiana that does, but we're one that doesn't. So it's very, very important for us to maintain those millages that we have. The millage we have due on the 10th of December is a millage that has been in existence for 28 years. And like I say, it's very important to the overall operation of it. Just to break it down to you, and we gave you all these packets, everything's in there for you to look at for what I've said already. But, and it gives you all the information that you might need. But to break it down for you in the simplest way I can tell you, our budget for the sheriff's office is right around $98 million a year. If we lose this millage, it's going to take about $35 million a year out of our budget. I don't want to even begin to think about that. To lose roughly a third of your budget would be devastating to us. It equates to about 256 positions, and we certainly would not be able, if we were to lose it, God forbid, that if we do lose it, it's going to really cut into the services that we provide to the entire parish. And I'm just asking you here tonight to let you know what it is, what we need, why the importance of us and why we need it, and ask you to please support it on December the 10th. I haven't gone to you as sheriff. I haven't gone to the public to ask for any increases. And we're going to continue to try to do what we do without having to go to the public for increases. But simply put, if you want to defund the police, vote no for it. If you want to keep us doing what we do, vote yes. So, anybody have any questions? Well, great. I love Central. Thank y'all very much. The handouts we have for the back at the back table, if anybody wants to pick one up, please feel free to do so. And if you have any kind of problem, call Captain. And I want to introduce Ricky Klug. He's Major over our Uniform Patrol, and Casey Hicks is our Public Information Director.
I used to work for it.
Huh?
I used to work for it.
Well, yeah, you sure did. You want to discuss all those things? Central is dear to my heart. When I first put a badge on and put a uniform on, I was assigned here at Central Substation, and that's when we were still in the old fire station. We had a little office there, and before I left, they dedicated the new station. But it's where I started my career in law enforcement here. Got a lot of friends, a lot of family out here. And it just means a lot to me that the people that live out here and support what we've got over the years. Wayne Messina. I can write a book on that.
Don't give him a gun.
Thank you for all y'all do.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Do not give him a gun.
All right, I will turn the reading of the remainder of the items on the agenda to the city clerk.
Thank you. 2 zoning cases, 1 discussion and action regarding the following P&Z cases. A RZ 1019, an ordinance amending number 2020-12 and granting site plan approval for an approximately 1.6 acre parcel in order to permit the construction and operation of 2 office buildings, Oak Grove Plaza, by Councilmember Roy. Commission action September 22nd, 2022. Mr. Sheriff Connie moved to recommend approval of this item with staff's comments. The motion was seconded by Mr. Menino. Public comment none. Vote 5 yeas, 0 nays, 2 absent. Motion passed. Councilmember Roy.
I would make a motion to approve.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Wells. Any discussion, council, before we go to the public? Councilmember Roy.
Just a brief, what this change is. Back in March of 2020, we adopted an ordinance allowing, permitting the construction and operation of 2 office buildings not to exceed 7,000 square feet, and for interconnectivity between the parcels for vehicles. Developers seeking to change the 7,000 square feet requirement to be roughly 160 more square feet for the buildings, and to allow the development without the vehicle interparcel connectivity. So those are the main 2 changes that they're seeking in order to build this. And this is over the Oak Grove area.
Any other discussion, council? Councilmember Evans.
Yeah, and I want to make clear, the connectivity cannot happen because the adjacent landowner does not want to provide access at this point. So it's not that the developer's willing to do that. So I just want to clear that up.
Councilmember Fournette.
So, question for staff. In your staff report, you say staff prefers the previously approved site plan and interparcel connectivity. Was there ever an agreement with the adjacent property owner to have interparcel connectivity?
My understanding, no.
Okay. It kind of brings up, I'm kind of a systems guy. I look for what we do in the future to avoid this. So on this particular one, there is property to the south of this. Can we require this current property owner, the applicant, to say, well, when the property to the south of me comes up, I will allow connectivity? Can we write that into our ordinance?
We've already done that. I don't know if we can speak yet, but we've already done that, and we've got it approved through the planning commission to provide a servitude of access to the property to the south.
Okay, so that's required, and we don't have to have this discussion at a future council meeting.
Yeah, that's already been rezoned.
Okay, and I guess the other thing is, I think we need to start looking at each application and requiring, because we obviously didn't on the property to the north, so I think, or whatever council did that, but I think we need to take staff, if you would, take a look at what interconnectivity may be available in the future, much like you do with the subdivisions, and take the same approach to our commercial.
Any other discussion, council, before we go to the public? All right, next we'll go to the public for comment. Anyone from the public wish to comment on this item?
O. James Booty, Centerline Engineering, here on behalf of the owner. I have, y'all discussed everything at length, so I just have one question. When we came through the first time, we had a just preliminary site plan that, per City of Central rules and ordinances, we did not have to have it designed at that point, which is why we came up with, we're probably going to put around 2 3,500 square foot buildings. I personally, and I'll take the blame, I didn't realize that that would then be written into the ordinance that's 7,000 square feet. Right now, we did get the architect, and you can see we're at 7,166 square feet. My concern is, if a wall has to move for some reason and we get to 7,168, is that a problem? Can we say anything less than 7,500? Is there a way so we're not having to do this again to rewrite the ordinance if the building were to possibly change? And that's just my question that I had.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak on this item? Okay, public hearing having been held, back to you, council. Any discussion? Councilmember Fournette.
Offer an amendment to make this up to 7,500 square feet.
Second it.
Second. Okay. Any objections to the amendment? Okay. Any discussion, Councilmember?
Quick question. If it goes to 7,500, I don't have the site plan in front of me. Are you guys worried about any setbacks or easements or limitations or restrictions on parking, or does the site plan allow sufficient space to get that done?
No, I don't see any issue with that. I also don't see it getting anywhere near 7,500. I just don't want to have to come back if we go over about 5 or 10 square feet. I just would like to have a buffer in there if they have to adjust it. That's all.
Yeah, if the brick guys are half inch off for the photo. It'll change the square footage of the whole building.
Any other discussion, council, before we vote on the item? Okay, we'll vote on the item as amended. Roll call.
Evans?
Yes.
Brunel?
Yes.
Lazare?
Yes.
McKinney?
Yes.
Meyer?
Yes.
Roy?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Next item B, TA 422, an ordinance amending section 74102 of the City of Central Development Code by Councilmember Lazaro. Commission action, September 22nd, 2022. Mr. Menino moved to recommend approval of this item. The motion was seconded by Mr. Furman. Public comment, Donnie Fuselier. Vote 5 yeas, 0 nays, 2 absent. Motion passed. Councilmember Lazaro.
I'm presenting this at the request of Planning and Zoning. They brought it to our attention that the rules regarding resubmission of requests for subdivisions of small subdivisions doesn't match the same criteria for large ones. So it was possible and was actually occurring, or somebody wishing to subdivide a property would keep coming back every 30 days, asking, without making any substantial changes. So this ordinance just brings things in line with the same rules for a large lot subdivision. Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Wells. Any discussion, council, before we go to the public? Councilmember Fournette.
Yeah, I agree that if they bring plan to bring an identical request to the planning commission, I think it can certainly be prohibited for that year. My problem comes in the word substantially similar, because that puts the property owner, who we've put restrictions on, and we've written the rules and said, if you want to do something, you got to come for our permission. That's kind of a due process thing. They have a process they can go through to have it requested. If they make a change, they believe the planning commission would sway 4 members of the planning commission, and staff goes, well, I don't think that's substantial. I think that's substantially similar. Well, it might not be. That's a planning commission decision, and I'm kind of a property rights person. I want to see the public be able to do what they want. If they're willing to go through the hassle and the cost, et cetera, of coming back before the government that they already fund, and I realize P&Z is volunteer, that's the exception there, to say, well, look, I know you didn't approve it this way, but I moved this line and I've changed this somewhat, and I'd like you to reconsider that. I know it's a problem that if somebody just doggedly wants to come back over and over, but that's kind of what we have to do as a government, is let the people do what they want with their property. And an identical request, I agree, but I'd like to see identical request, I could see limiting. I'd like to change the word substantially similar to identical.
Councilmember Lazaro.
And Dave, it's not just a burden on us, it's also a burden to the neighbors who have to keep coming out time after time after time. And, and a developer hoping that maybe the wrong people or the right people just won't show up this time and they'll get it through. So we're also doing, I'm doing it, at the request of planning and zoning, but also for the neighbors who had to keep coming out over and over again.
So my issue would be, if I've made a change, it's not me, but if I made a change that I believe is going to sway planning and zoning, and staff, not elected, not appointed, says, nah, not going to let them hear this one. That's not fair to the property owner. Identical is one thing, but substantially similar is too much of a judgment call. I think that has to go back to the deciding body.
So we're going to go back and change the rules for a large lot subdivision too?
We could. That's not before us today.
No,
I'm looking at private property owner.
I mean, substantially similar, or substantially different. I think it means something to everybody else in here. Okay.
Any other discussion, council, before we go to the public? Okay, next we'll go to the public for comment.
My name is Tommy Bartell, and I'm at 13,000 Triple B Road, and I am a neighbor that this is affecting. For 3 times in the last year and a half, I've had to come and be on my guard to watch signs in my neighbor's yard. This is to protect us. This is to protect the people in our neighborhood, so we don't have to keep a close eye and watch that little yellow sign that's still there from May to see if somebody's updated the date on it, so we can stay vigilant to come back to see what's happening. Because it is a minor change, and I think the P&Z is the best to decide that. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak?
Donnie Fusler, 9542 Overwood Drive. I did comment on this at P&Z. The case that caused this was, as Ms. Bartell said, right next door to him on Triple B Road. Guy came, wanted to subdivide 1 into 5. Planning and zoning shut it down mainly because of drainage issues, because the property itself is essentially a ravine, and somebody sneezes, that property retains water. They came back, I don't know, about maybe 6 months later, wanted to do 1 into 4. Planning and zoning shut it down. They came back literally the next month, 1 into 4. I mean, a substantial change could be argued that he went 1 into 5 to 1 into 4, so he could sit there and go, well, this month I'm asked 1 to 5, this month I'm asked 1 to 4, next month I'm asked 1 to 5. I think that the change that Councilman Lazaro is presenting is a very fair change. I believe it's a well-written change, and I think it'll take a lot of burden off of planning and zoning. I support it, and I ask for you to vote for it. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak?
Ray Ashford, Empress Drive. With respect to your concerns, I think when somebody goes before the planning commission is really open to listening. So if there's a small discrepancy, they could defer it and then could come back. But if it's, I like the intent of it. I understand what you're saying, but things are deferred all the time to get it straight. If it's not worthy of being a deferred, it means it's probably not going to get approved again anyway. So it's just my take. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak? Okay, public hearing having been held, back to you, council. Any discussion? Councilmember Evans.
I think the intent is great. I guess, how do we determine what is a substantial change? That's the only thing. I mean, I agree, and I know exactly what we're talking about. And one of the commenters actually made the point that this is better to be judged by the P&Z. And so, do we, are we putting a burden on staff that they don't have the metrics to then decide what is substantial? Is there a value you place on it? Is there a square footage you place on it? I don't know how you do that. And I think it's great. I think it's a good idea. But I do also, we take the human error out of it if we have, well, this one is good for here. So I don't know. I mean, is Woodrow, can you speak to what you've seen as substantial, or Matt? I just wanted the intent, like, is there a way that we can discern what is substantial for one but not the other?
I think it's going to be evaluated case by case. Number of lots could be used, and if we know that drainage was an issue in one case, and if the drainage has not been resolved, I think that is not substantial, in my opinion.
No, I agree, and that's why.
So I think it's case by case, and whatever the issue is for that particular subdivision, if it's drainage, if it's sewer, and also, Councilman Frito, there's language in the code that states that if an applicant wants to appeal the staff decision, then it can go to the planning commission. So even though we might make a determination that it's not substantial, they can appeal the staff's opinion and go to the planning commission. That's already written in the ordinance.
Councilmember Fournette.
Appealing a staff decision to planning commission is a quasi-judicial hearing. It is and I'm sorry, that would go to Board of Adjustment, correct?
No.
Appealing a staff decision?
It's the development code, not the zoning code.
Okay. I'll just stick with my thought that the property owner has the right to go through our processes.
Any Councilmember Wells?
I don't know if this would be legal, but if there were a way that we could add in, unless changes have been made based upon recommendation by staff. So then you know that it's not, if it came in front of the P&Z, the staff recommended 3 different things, and they actually changed those 3 different things, then maybe we could hear it again. But if they don't, they need to wait a year to bring it back up. I don't know.
Councilmember McKinney?
I think in theory, I'm agreeing with what you're saying, but that would constitute a significant change in itself. Like that.
I have worse luck with microphones. I think that would constitute a significant change if things were made. So I agree with what you're saying, but I don't know if it doesn't already fall into the ordinance the way that it's written. One other point that to bring up, and again, I think I agree with both parties, see both sides. There is an ability to, if you're denied by planning and zoning, you can have that heard in court, correct? So that would be a method to shorten the 1 year if you feel that. I guess to feel that if you disagree with the staff of planning and zoning commission. So that's my thought on it.
All right. Councilmember Meyer.
Okay, so my view on this is, it is needed. It has become a problem for P&Z. But I have the same issue with the substantially similar, application, just because if staff's reviewing that and there's no set criteria, then any decision saying, hey, we think it is substantially similar, could be called arbitrary or, just challenged in court, which usually the city is going to win that battle 9 times out of 10. But if P&Z and staff in the initial application process are, detailing the reasons for the denial, then that gives a baseline for what is substantially similar when they do come back. It's, hey, these are the issues that, we saw with your plans here, and if those aren't addressed in some form or fashion, then okay, well, this is substantially the same development coming before us again, and we should have that waiting period so people don't abuse the system. But at the same time, if you're given those reasons up front in the first application, then you're also respecting the property owner's rights and saying, hey, this is basically a map to what we would need to see for it to be a substantial change.
And Councilmember Roy.
My comments are substantially similar to what has already been said, but not the same. I think there's a built-in process here already. I mean, I agree. We've already passed one that, with residential, I believe, where you have to wait a year. I don't see why we don't make this consistent with the same thing. There's enough interpretation throughout all the code for staff. They've got to interpret things all the time, and it's going to be different. But I think there's a remedy for the developer or whoever's seeking the application of the change through our code. Moreover, to what Mr. Ray said, generally, even when it comes to us, when things come to us or P&Z, they usually discuss, hey, if you do this or that, then we would probably be willing to approve this, and they give a lot of warning signs before the vote actually occurs. So I think that's another safeguard for a developer, and if they decide, as we've seen, to bulldoze forward on something, then that's the consequence that they have. You're going to have to wait a year. And so I think that gives us some, again, we favor property rights, but we want to do what's best for the city. And if in our judgment, what they're trying to get approved is what's best for the city, then we don't want them to keep coming and using our resources and our time and our staff to keep bringing these issues up. I think it gives us a little bit of leverage as well to for lack of better words, get maybe what we want on the initial application, or else they got to wait a year. So I'm okay with the language as it is.
Any other discussion, council? Councilmember Fernandez.
I think there have been some suggestions that could improve this process. Some definition of what is substantially similar, as Councilmember Evans suggested. I think it's a good idea. I think it needs a revision before it would become law, but that's just my opinion.
Any other discussion before we vote, council? Okay, roll call.
Evans?
Yes.
Burnett?
No.
Lazaro?
Yes.
McKinney?
Yes.
Meyer?
Yes.
Roy?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Next, item 2, introduction of the following P&Z item, a public hearing to be held at the November 22nd, 2022 council meeting. ACUP 420 REV and ordinance amending ordinance 2021-06 and provide for the construction and operation of a 7,200 square foot baseball field house at Central High School. Applicant Travis Dickerson. 3, old business. None. 4, new business. Public hearing and action regarding the following instruments. 1, a resolution to adopt the 2021-2022 Louisiana Compliance Questionnaire required by the Louisiana Legislative Auditor and to provide for related matters by Councilmember Lazaro. Councilmember Lazaro.
Suzanne asked if she could use my name. I told her yes.
And
motion approved. Second.
Second by Councilmember Meyer. Any discussion, council, before we go to the public? Okay, next we'll go to the public for comment. Anyone from the public wish to comment on this item?
Mark Cord, 15340 Pinewood Drive. I don't think they should be allowed to build it until they can provide adequate parking. central idea of central schools. Oh, I'm sorry.
We're- Anyone else from the public wish to comment on this item? All right, public hearing having been held, back to you, council. Any discussion before we vote? Okay, roll call.
Evans?
Yes.
Cornell?
Yes.
Lazarus?
Yes.
McKinney?
Yes.
Meyer?
Yes.
Roy?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Next, item 2, discussion of the Highway 64 spur by Councilmember Evans. Councilmember Evans.
Yeah, council, this is a discussion item to discuss a state project and get some information. I would ask for a point of privilege to allow State Representative Ivy time to do a presentation on the information he does have on this without a time limit, so he's not held to 3 minutes. And he can tell us what he knows as the representative of this district. So, Representative Ivy, as long as the council doesn't object, you have the floor.
Any objections from the council? All right, Representative Ivy.
Thank you. Everything that I reference document-wise, I have a copy in here that after I can provide everyone just for your follow-up reference. So, LA 64 Spur project. Last council meeting, a lot of constituents showed up to try to express. Wasn't on the agenda, but we were able to provide a little bit of information. Appreciate Councilman Evans for adding it to the agenda, because I do believe it is a very important issue with regard to this project and the impact that it has on the community, not only as a whole, but specific to the development that is going to be primarily impacted by this. And so it's the project title on state legislative and also DOTD documents is LA 64 Spur, which the Wax Road extension has nothing to do with LA 64. And so I just want to walk you through the progression of how things happen as far as what information I'm privileged with, and then provide an update on some of the project details and also the master plan, how obviously this is a project, it's been stated multiple times and also in the capital outlay request that this is a project that's on the master plan for transportation. So capital outlay requests from local entities, agencies of government, and the mayor is the one in Central who's supposed to submit those requests for the city. The chief of police also makes requests. Fire also makes requests, and it's a formality, obviously, as Senator White and myself, and in some cases Valerie, depending on the location of the project. We're always happy to support capital projects, for our community. A typical local project requires, by statute, a minimum of 25% local dollars. And then the state could theoretically pick up the rest. The capital outlay budget is always overprescribed, meaning there are more projects that get put in that bill than ever get funded. And so it's kind of it's not very transparent with regard to what's actually being, what projects are actually being selected that goes through bond commission. It's a lot more political than people know. So the project started at the request of the mayor, and again, at last council meeting, I had to take some ownership. I did sign the capital outlay request letter in support of the project. It was during, I think, October of 2020, because you have to have it in by November 1st for the following budget year. And my assistant put a stack of them on there, and I signed them thinking more formality. That's my fault. So while I initially had a document saying I supported it, I absolutely do not support this project. So the initial request for funding, the initial title was Wax Road LA 3034 Extension. And it said under location on the document, Wax Road from Sullivan Road to proposed Hooper Road intersection, cost estimate, and these are the numbers inputted by the mayor. I'm sure he's got some formula for this, $5.98 million. The project was not introduced into the HB2, which is the capital outlay budget bill. It was added as an amendment on the Senate side, but when the project was actually added, it had a new project ID, and it became, instead of a local project, which required the local match, it became a state project exclusively. It's a state project. And all of the substantive information was kept from the initial request, and then, except one thing, it was renamed to LA Highway 64 Spur Planning and Construction. So that was for the 21-22 fiscal year. Now, this year, we just passed HB2 again, and in the 22-23 year, okay, things changed quite a bit. Suddenly, the cost estimate is now $18 million. And I had to get some information from DOTD because I'm like, what are we getting for the money, right? Initially, and as it's stated in the transportation plan, it's one of these like connector roads, and one of those roads is just a little 2-lane road that meant to kind of connect things and help move people around the city. And so, but $18 million went from a 6 to 18. I didn't understand. Got some information back from DOTD. Okay, so environmental, maybe 600,000. If we don't use federal funds, there would be no environmental cost there. Property surveying, right-of-way maps, 35,000. Engineering, consultant services for traffic and road design, 800,000. Right-of-way for 2-lane road, 6,036,000, or $7.5 million estimated for a 4-lane divided highway. And then 1.5 million utility relocation, and then 6.5 million for construction, plus an additional 750 may be needed depending on the intersection type and whatnot. So I don't understand. This is 1 mile of highway, and if you look at the map, and if you're familiar with the maps on the city government's website, this literally just takes Wax through Central Square and pops out to Hooper. It's all undeveloped land. And so I can't conceive why, I don't know what the vision is for this project. It's not available in any documents or from DOTD. So that's part of my big concern. My other concern is the impact of massive through traffic through what is a neighborhood street. Running these cars, one of the few roads in Central with bike lanes, is at the end of this, of Central Square. And so it is a very pedestrian neighborhood by design. And I know that what was on the map when the development happened, I get all that. But in my limited research, I'm not aware of the city of Central adding a single linear foot of road to our community since this master plan, transportation plan was adopted, or since it was produced. And so the very first project that is being pursued is a project that, in my opinion, makes very little sense. You're going to spend $18 million, on transportation infrastructure. Everyone here knows much better options to invest those dollars in. If this was a city government, central taxpayer only funded project, there's not one of you who would vote for this over many other alternatives. I mean, come on, let's be real. And so, this is from the transportation plan right here. I just pulled out a few relevant things. Chapter 5, Transportation Plan, it says the recommended transportation plan consists of a list of transportation projects that collectively represent the City of Central's planned future transportation network. I'm skipping, and it says, in many cases, additional study may be required in order to determine the most effective and feasible improvement alternative. It said, further reading, it says, it also recognized the reality of induced demand. This is additional roadway capacity inevitably generates additional traffic. We know this. So every time we expand, the throughway, we have more traffic. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. It says the recommended improvement program is a long-range plan for transportation improvements in the city of Central that envisions implementation over the period spanning from 2013 until 2037. We're almost halfway through this grand vision of, addressing Central's traffic through, road infrastructure projects, and we haven't done anything, not at the local level. There's a few state things that I know Senator White's been working on since he was a House member. And some of these projects just take forever, like Hooper Road 4-laning is a great example. And so what this project is specifically is part of what's referred to as Alternative 8 on the map. And they're called collector roads. Let's see. Yes, so the feasibility of these collector roadways highly depends on the implementation of the adopted city's master land use plan. Now, I don't pay attention to all those details, and that's what y'all do on a regular basis, so I have to defer to y'all, but I do believe that after, a decade, I think further study should occur to determine what priorities should occur, what road priorities we should make for, these types of opportunities when there's major funding like this. And so, again, this solution, part of the alternative, it's only one of, dozens of connector roads. So it's just one. So is this the only one that we're going to do? Are we pursuing others? I don't see anything planned. I've heard nothing discussed about, so is this really about improving traffic in the community? I can't see how it does. Another element to this is the fact that, if I can find the page. Okay, it says alternative scenario analysis. There's a term they use called no-build network, and on the map it shows what the no-build network is, and this is a black and white map, but basically it's, Sullivan Road is on that no-build network. What they did was, in their calculation, they did not include any planned work for Sullivan Road in their assessment. We all know, the Sullivan Road widening north of Wax Road has been trying to happen forever, and there's been delay after delay after delay. I got an update today from DOTD. They're actually planning on releasing the new, we had the contractor failed to perform and was removed. And so they're going to be submitting a public notice, I believe, early November for the project, with the anticipation of letting it in early December for the finishing of the Sullivan 4-laning. And so that's all good news. But and that's going to get finished before this street that's being proposed could possibly be finished. It's less than the exit on Hooper is less than a half a mile away from what will be a brand new major intersection at Hooper and Sullivan. And so it just doesn't make sense. I asked the DOTD folks, well, what can we do about it? And they said, well, look, if your city council doesn't want the project, then we won't do the project. And so, while we all have roles to play in this process, and it's why I'm here today. My role, I won't be able to support the project in future legislative sessions. We'll have one, opportunity next year before, the term is ended. I won't support it, but the capital outlay bill usually passes. We don't not have a capital outlay bill. So all that said, there's a role that y'all can play in whether or not y'all support this type of a project. And
in the bigger scheme of things, I believe Central, y'all know we are a very conservative community, especially when it relates to, how the government spends our tax dollars. Now, while these are technically state dollars, they're tax dollars. And I don't see the constituents that I serve and the constituents that you serve being proud to build a road that costs $18 million that doesn't really serve that many people. Where there's more greater needs. Like, why not 4-lane wax road? That's on your master plan. I mean, that would work well with the completion of the Sullivan widening to Hooper Road project. There's a lot of other areas, and I'm happy to fight for funding for those projects as well. And so I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them, and I can provide these documents to you after.
I do have a couple questions. One, is this process too far to where we could ask for maybe a legislative intent change for that money to go to a different project in Central?
Technically, capital outlet, well, first of all, it's a state project, so there's no control in that regard. We'd have to submit a new request. I can't submit a agency request, but a local request can be submitted. But again, it would bring that to a local project, and yes, we can ask to just have a new project.
Well, I think because the money has been allocated, and I know it hasn't gone to bond or what have you. That's my thing. Is like
there's various levels of funding. Yeah. That's a whole different can of worms. But there is some funding that's already been set aside for that, and so I'm sure that is a real possibility that we can get those rededicated.
So while we are discussing this now, is also I did receive an email from someone in Huntley, and I do appreciate their concerns about losing the light at Sullivan. And losing that light would make it difficult for them to turn out on the Sullivan once it's finished. Is there, and this is something I guess as a city we need to look at, is there connectivity available from Huntley to Central Square that would satisfy those needs?
And that was one of the things I forgot to mention, so I'm glad you brought that up. So I've got some screenshots. These are all from the interactive map on Central Government's website under the planning and zoning site specifically. And I did some, rough calculations with, Google Earth, measurement tools. So here's Central Square with those rows of houses right there, and that's where the road ends. And then the Huntley Place, East Marlin Drive ends right here. And so really connecting from here to here, I did the measurement, it's 600 feet of road. And so I do recognize the need for people who may live in that subdivision. If that light is removed, it does create a burden to try to, have to take a right, make a U-turn. It's just a lot of extra unnecessary. So I think something like this makes much greater sense to solve that issue. And it's only 600 feet, so I don't think it would, it wouldn't need to be its own dedicated project. That's small enough the city might be able to handle something like that. A little 2-lane connector road that's 600 feet long. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, with bike lanes and pedestrian friendly,
exactly.
No speed limit.
Exactly.
Because I was looking at one of the requests and it said 7,000 cars anticipated, and I'm like, I was watching my daughter ride her bike in front of my house thinking, I mean, we have maybe 40 houses on my street and there's 3 cars an hour maybe, but 7,000 cars in front of a pedestrian friendly street is something that kind of raised my concern level and brought in the empathy for the homeowners, whereas I think it's more palatable if there's a Huntley connection to the Wax Road through that, and it's not enough to, because we could deal with the detention pond, that would be an issue we would have to deal with, obviously. But all right, does anybody else have anything?
I have a couple of questions. You said at the beginning of the project, how did the project, I guess, get put into HGO Act 117? You said someone wrote a letter to you?
Okay, so the first year that it was put in was the 21-22. The mayor made an initial request. That request technically, and I signed the letter of support, which is required for those local projects. I signed that, but that request technically did not make it into HB2 at all. That because the project was converted to a state project, and which is a whole different project, not requiring any local support or anything like that, or legislative support, other than getting in the bill. And that was added in a Senate committee amendment. So the next year, HB2 is a brand new bill, and so projects have to be like reconfirmed. And so this project was reconfirmed. Things change, and when that happened, and it technically has a new project ID. So I don't know internally if it was converted or if it was just a new project. But they look similar enough to where you can just say that it was,
confirms it though.
Well, I mean, it's put in the bill, HB2, and so that one started out in HB2 as an agency request. No, it's not necessary because it's a state project at this point.
At that point.
So for this year, this current year we're in, it showed up as a state project and was just in the bill to start. And it was called LA 64 Spur. So, I mean, if you're looking for a Wax Road extension project, you ain't gonna find it. Literally, I couldn't find it. I had to get DOTD to help me find the project in the legislative instrument because it's called LA 64 Spur, which has nothing to do with Wax Road.
So it doesn't have to do with your area, so you weren't looking.
Exactly. I could not tell that project, those funds were for this project.
But you supported it, you just didn't realize what it was for?
When I initially signed a letter of support, okay, again, it's usually a formality. That's my fault for not reading the attention to details. We were in the middle of COVID, mask mandates, and everything was shut. Things were shut down. So the biggest fire that I had to deal with legislatively with my constituents was COVID, and so. Things. That was my fault for not doing my due diligence on that one request. Again, usually it's formality, but anyway, I can change my mind and.
No, I mean because last time you came, you said that by vote of the council, but I talked to an attorney, and as a council, we cannot, once it's signed by the governor, it's a state project, we cannot vote to override the project.
Correct, but DOTD doesn't have to act on, again. Just because a project's in the bill doesn't mean it will ever get constructed. Right. And so they can reprioritize, and of course, between now and next year, it's possible we could, request for, moving monies that were dedicated for this project to something that maybe y'all could get together on and determine is a, better use of those resources.
But it's not something that the council can vote on.
No, but we, as a legislator, I need y'all's input. If it's a local project, that's technically done by the mayor. I'm sure that, at times, needs get brought to him from council members, from constituents, and he's able to, make a request if need be. And this is no different than that. There is an opportunity. The deadline is November 1st for those submittals. So, but there still is time for local requests.
Any other questions, council?
To give everybody a little history and a clarification, this Wax Road Extension project was started way back in 2010 with former Mayor Mack Watts, okay, when he was first mayor, and he made this a priority in looking at the master plan and the transportation plan. When Jeff Kubion went to build Central Square and went before the Planning Commission and City Council back then, they knew this road was going to be extended at some point in the future. So the first phase was the commercial area up front to the turnaround there by Cafe Phoenicia. When the second phase came in, and I don't have the exact timetable on that, but shortly thereafter, maybe 2012, 2013, they knew this Wax Road extension was going to Hooper. And all of the things in our transportation plan, such as bicycle lanes, etc., that's why there's bicycle lanes in there, because they knew this road was going to extend to Hooper at some point, and they wanted to have the sidewalks and the bicycle lanes in there. So when Jeff built it, the City Council and the Planning Commission back then told him, you have to build this
to these standards with bicycle lanes and sidewalks incorporated in there. It dead ends at the current spot, so that was phase 2 that Jeff has. Jeff still owns the remaining property further down all the way to Shoe Creek, and he was going to end up at some point building the phase 3. And it was at that time that the people in Huntley Place, had requested that they have another way in and out, because they knew that when Sullivan was going to be widened, there was going to be a median there, and that traffic signal was going to be taken down. However, a property owner there at the end of that stub out, before this was being discussed, went before the planning commission and had that revoked, because he didn't want that traffic coming in front of his house coming through Huntley Place. So that stub out area there has been revoked. However, there is another stub out at the very back of Huntley Place at Shoe Creek. And that's where it was always going to be planned, since that was still available, to take that out to the Wax Road extension. When the Shoe Creek development came up in 2015, they had all of the area, of course, where they're building Shoe Creek now, and the area across from Shoe Creek that goes to Morgan Place. And when that development was approved in 2015, under the previous mayor and council, they made them, the developer at that time, dedicate the right-of-way, and was told he had to construct the section of the Wax Road extension that goes through his property there for Shoe Creek. So when you look on the approved maps of Shoe Creek on the other side by Morgan Place, the developer was going to have to build the Wax Road extension with a median, bike lanes, etc., through that part of the property. There's only the detention pond in the back there that we're talking on Jeff's third phase is really not necessary. Jeff always said that's kind of just as a small pond filtration. What Shoe Creek has built now has pretty much made that little pond obsolete and not really needed anymore, so it could easily be removed. There are only 2 other pieces of property. One is the Prey property, and then there's a property just to the south of it. And I know the value of the Prey property because we've been talking with them over the last year about something else. So I really don't know where this 18 million came from. That's the first time I've ever heard that number is tonight. In all of our discussions with DOTD previously, it was always $6 to $7 million. And looking at our local engineers based on a 2-lane roadway to continue it on, we even talked with developers and got those numbers. So I don't know whether that's DOTD just given some standard cost number that they use on different projects or not, but that's, excuse me ma'am, it's not time to talk. So I don't know where this 18 million is suddenly coming from. I know that Sullivan Road only costs 13 million. So I don't know where you're getting a 2-lane roadway through these small pieces of property. I know the Prey property is only valued for the entire parcel of the Prey property, which is almost 20 acres, is $500,000. So I think DOTD is just coming up with some standard number. But I just want everybody to know, just for the record, that for the last 3 administrations, this roadway has been planned, and that's why it's been built. And just so everybody can know, Senator White did come last year and asked, is there a major road project that's being done in Central? And we said, well, the Wax Road still needs to go through with Shoe. This was before all these changes came to Shoe Creek. So we said, that is trying to be done. So he did agree to appropriate this in the bill. The city council, this city council right here, in this year's current budget, appropriated $1 million to go towards this road project for engineering costs. So it's been discussed frequently. But I just want everybody to know, even if this is removed as a state project, okay, if it is removed as a state project, private developers can still come in and build this road. Like Jeff can go ahead and build it through his part, like we talked, to get to the other part for Huntley Place that we talked about. And a private developer can come through the Shoe Creek area or the Prey property and build it on that end as a connection. So I just want everybody to know, even if it is removed as a state project, the private landowners that live there can still come forward and put a roadway through there. So I just wanted to kind of give everybody the background on how it's evolved over the last 3 different administrations.
So when it goes to a state project, the city doesn't request anything, we don't have to
No, there's no local funding required. And so the $1 million you have I don't even know how you would technically spend it unless maybe toward some phase, they were short on, actually obtaining funding from the bond commission or, cash line of credit or something like that. And
So
y'all
I
want
was
to, but it's not
for
required.
this when Shoe Creek was going to be developed out all the way to the back. But when they came to us a few months back with a major change, and they're no longer developing the whole back section of that property, the viability of this road going all the way to Hooper, in addition to the fact that Sullivan Road is being constructed and it wasn't even on the traffic master plan as a viable option at that time, I'm not sure that this is the best project. And so there's a lot of people concerned. I don't think the interconnectivity between the two neighborhoods is near the concern as the number of 7,000 cars, which was on the original application. And I think that's the concerning thing for everybody that's here. And so,
Yeah. And I'm not familiar with the changes that were made to Shoe Creek, but if it was more of a residential neighborhood, roadway that would be the connector road, that's very different than running something through that is ultimately a thoroughfare. Even if it's 2 lane, if there's, if it's just a straight shot, we know how people drive around here.
Well, no matter what you build there, if it's a cut through, whether it's designed to handle a lot of traffic or not, there will be a lot of traffic. I guess the summary for me is things change. In 2010, when there was nothing sitting there, and it looked like, hey, taking wax through here and making a right come to Hooper looks like a good idea with nothing else built there. As to whether developers can come in and build that road anyway, I think that requires council permission. So that's not something that somebody can just force on us anyway. So I think things change. I can't appreciate any more than I already do the efforts of our legislators to acquire money for Central, and I'm hopeful that we can redirect this money. But I think there are roadways need improving and building that are more appropriate today than 2010. It was a good idea. Today, it probably is not.
Councilman Wells.
So whenever I spoke to DOTD, they said that they weren't sure where the right of way would be, and that and you said it last time, that anyone who saw a post in the yard, they were basically survey points, control points. And you mentioned about I guess whenever you were talking about this project, and do you know where the exact location is supposed to be? And what, everybody has
Traffic studies would have to be done, to determine those kinds of things, and so that still requires a lot of work to do. But that's why I think it's a 200-foot swath of land that they're surveying. So it would be within that, those parameters.
So what's the?
And I'm not aware that, because it was brought to my attention, some people were concerned, particularly the folks who live in the Central Square development who are within that 200 feet. I'm not aware of DOTD having any plans to acquire or take down any homes. So I hope people rest a little easy on that, even though the concern about a more major thoroughfare in front. Literally, I think I measured it, I had it last time with me, but it's like, 18 feet from their front door. You have this major.
So, and I guess, and DOTD couldn't answer this, but I figured you might be able, what's the overall purpose of it? Because, like we said, when we thought the T&D was going to be built out residentially, and then it wasn't, because I think if we could all understand the overall purpose, then we could look for other options. But I guess what's the intent, what's the purpose? And as far as a developer buying the land and building the road, I mean, I'm all for if a developer wants to develop, then they can build roads. But I do want to understand the overall purpose of this specific road, because if it's something that we need locally, I don't want to completely shut it down, but maybe it's not the right spot, maybe it's not the right area. What's the point? What's the purpose?
So within the capital outlay request, which again, for this current year, 22-23 fiscal year, and this is in the documentation provided by the, agency, Department of Transportation, and this was not in the mayor's request, this information. This is one of the things that changed from last year to this year. It says, the proposed new roadway is part of the City of Central's master transportation plan to construct a new bypass roadway connecting Hooper Road to Wax Road. At this time, the bond commission is not granted cash letter, and that's it. That's all I have. That's all anybody has. Now, I will tell you that, I hate to tell, say it publicly, but I talked with Secretary Wilson, who's Secretary of the Department of Transportation. When I inquired initially about this $18 million, he kind of took a defensive position in that, hey, it costs money. And I'm like, well, I don't know what we're getting for the $18 million. And he seemed to imply that acquiring enough land for a 4-lane divided highway, whether or not, 2-lane versus 4-lane to start or, expand later. But again, even just the fact that I think from DOT's, on their, the internal communications may be that, hey, we need to look at this more as a 4-lane divided highway project, even if initially it's only a 2-lane road, but acquiring the right of way and everything else like that. So, which just makes me, as a representative of this community, and also to the extent that the council may be completely unaware of this, and the mayor as well, because I think in his plans it was just a 2-lane road, but somehow it's maybe morphed into something else, and none of us really know what that is definitively. And so that's why that's kind of my concern, is that I can't really answer that question in details, because that's all I've been given.
Okay. Can anybody answer that question? Because I've heard things about Huntington Place. I understand if there's more, it's higher density than when that area is a high density area. So I understand the need for connectivity, but I guess I'm still confused about the purpose, and I think there are people here too that are.
Yeah, and
Just to clarify, and since Mac was mayor and the previous administration, everybody, there is no way that I would support, I don't think anybody sitting up here would support, and there's not room in this for this ever to be a 4-lane roadway. Okay, there's just not the room through the property to have a 4-lane. So somebody in DOTD, I think, yeah, they may have just been throwing something out there, not even knowing. But right, we all know that the right of way, even through Jeff's property, isn't even enough for a 4-lane road. It was always intended to be a 2-lane collector roadway. And some of the comments that have been said here tonight are true, because this was when the Shoe Creek development was going in, and you were going to be putting in almost 1,000 homes, plus apartments, plus commercial, and they were looking, you couldn't dump all that on Sullivan Road. Okay, that's what the traffic study said. You have to have another way out. And that's when they, discussed at that time going out to Hooper Road and having the back way, and they made them do that. But as we've said tonight, things change. Okay, the back part of that Shoe Creek development is not happening anymore. So, I think that's something that needs to be taken into consideration, knowing that you're not going to have as much development back there. Yeah. And that kind of was the reason behind it.
How does it tie into Huntington, I guess, would be my next question.
If the road were going to be built, you looked at, is it Marlin? Yes. Marlin. There's the dead end of Marlin. And it would have come out on the Shoe Creek property side where they were going to build their section through there. There would have been enough where you would have to extend Marlin across the Shoe Creek with a little bridge or box culvert and connect to the road that was going to be built over there. But, as we said before, that's no longer, that just got changed literally a couple of months ago. Okay, that got taken off the table. So like I said, some things have changed since the request was, first put in.
But the biggest problem, I guess, and because you're here, this is why I just kind of want to bring it seems like that residents of Huntington, due to Sullivan Road construction, they can only turn right. Is that correct? So that's, I guess, the biggest issue. I mean, we need to explore an option for that. But I'm not saying that this is it at all, but because you're here and we're talking about projects and money, do believe that if that's a problem, we need to explore.
Sure, and again, after just looking at the Google Maps, it appears that it would only require a 600-foot long, like, neighborhood road, like, kind of like continuing what's on East Marlin into the Central Square development. And, I didn't know this, but, you pointed out that the stub out at that location was revoked because of one person, right? The property owner there. And so I get it, everybody has that right, but, whoever was the decision makers and that on that, they decided to, grant that person's request. We've got a lot more people here who have, major concerns. And so I would imagine that a 600-foot neighborhood connecting just basically two neighborhoods would be a lot less offensive to that whoever that property owner is compared to a major, even a major 2-lane highway where the speed limit's 45 or something like that going by there. So.
That could solve the problem for Huntington.
I believe it absolutely could, and I believe that problem should be solved. And I think we're fortunate that the way the streets work out and the property and all that it can easily be worked out in a very cost-effective way. So, and again, we have until November 1st. The mayor's very familiar with this. I'm happy between now and then to meet with any of y'all to discuss potential alternatives. It may need to go back to a local project request. Versus a state request. Personally, I would love to see DOTD widen Wax Road, like, at least, 2-lane with a center turn lane all the way down, or 4-lane, would be more ideal. I was told by DOTD that they will be resurfacing all of Wax Road and doing some when they said widening, they mean where it was sub, below.
Put the shoulders gone, or put the shoulder back.
Yeah, exactly.
Hit it while you talk. Am I remembering wrong, or is that not in Movie BR? Is that not funded through Movie BR?
Which one? The
Wax Road, 4-lane.
Right.
That's
okay, that one's already there? Okay.
I mean, we could certainly widen.
But again, Movie BR is like, where's the funding, right? Because there's a lot of projects that are on the books. I just don't know when the money will ever
We were
get
promised
there.
we were first. I remember that.
People never lie.
It was a green light plan as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think the discussion that we had, and the key is things do change. And so I think this money, if we're going to be fiscal conservatives, this money could definitely be spent in a better area of our city. We have a few state roads, and so we want to keep trying to get as many state, as many state dollars as we can. But I think the concern is the impact to the neighbors. And so, moving forward, I look forward to working with this as a local project.
And Representative Ivey, while you're up here and we're talking about possible other scenarios, this really came out, kind of surprised for me too, as a state project just literally this summer.
Sure.
Because our council had put $1 million in there because we thought we were going to have a local project to start working on. And then all of a sudden we found out, well, hey, the state's going to take it over.
Sure.
Okay. But another project that would be worthwhile, if they want to come up with $18 million, hey, we'll take it.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not going to take it. But, we do need another north-south connection between Hooper and Wax, because this is what everybody needs to realize is, don't think about today. Think about where is Central going to be 30 years from now. And having only Sullivan Road as a north-south connection, you're going to be in a problem, 30 years from now. You can't handle it. So one that we have been looking at, and there have been some developers that are trying to do a project, is further down, almost across from Demco, okay, on Wax Road. Building a north-south, it's on our master plan, it's kind of shifted. It was a little further over towards the high school, but we kind of shifted it over, talked with some developers. But putting a north-south connector there that would go basically from Bridlewood on Hooper, where Bridlewood is, down to Banway at Biltmore, okay? And that would be another north-south connection right there. And we've actually been talking with the two developers that own those tracts of lands, because they're trying to develop that, and they want to put like a boulevard-type roadway that would go through there. So possibly that could be a better project and would provide in years to come for Central, another north-south connection on that end
going through.
Yeah, and look, it's closer to a 64 spur than this project, right?
Well, and also to get that Northwoods connection.
Right, and that was it. On that plan that we'd actually looked at the road, Northwoods would be able to connect to that to give them another way out, because they got 500 homes and they've been wanting another way in and out. They've been begging, and it could actually connect to that. So, that would definitely be
Sounds like I'll be calling your office tomorrow.
a good project to consider.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate the fact that this group has come out not once but twice, and I hope that you see that we're interested in your concerns. I certainly will be welcome to express them, but I think you read this room pretty well. I don't think there's much chance this is going to move forward.
Yeah, but it is a discussion item, so anybody who feels compelled to speak.
Thank you all for your time. I'll let everybody else. Well, obviously, it would be ideal for an alternative project to be a completely state, project. However, I don't know how practical that is, but just like, when the mayor submitted the original request, it got changed to a state request, and so that may still be a possibility. But I would recommend that the city submit a letter, a request for a capital outlay for a new project, and in that process, of course, Senator White, being the chair of finance, has a little bit of influence over these types of funding, and might be able to just get that redirected.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And again, it can happen after November 1st. It just gets put on a different list for approval. So just because you don't have it, and so I don't want to rush anything, but just FYI.
Well, I just know we don't need a 4-lane highway right there. We do know that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Councilmember Lazaro.
Yeah, I actually raised my hand and everybody ignored me.
You knocked your mic over.
Who here is from Huntley? Anybody? Anybody from Huntley? All right, thank you all for coming. After the last meeting, we all know how Central Square feels, and I understand it. Yeah, I mean, I ride back there often, and we always look around at all these houses being built. But, what are these people going to think when this road comes through? Now we know. But so after the last meeting, I was like, there's no reason to do this. Then I heard from people in Huntley, well, okay, we do have a reason to do this. That was going to be your escape route when we changed Sullivan. So anyway, we got to continue the discussions, obviously, and give them a new route out. So,
yeah, I agree, but I think the more cost-effective and practical way would just be to keep it a neighborhood throughway from the Huntley subdivision to the Central Square.
That makes sense.
I think everybody would feel that that's fairly appropriate.
That makes sense.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Thank y'all for your time.
All right. Do we have a motion by anyone?
Well, it's not a motion, it's just a discussion item, but if anyone from the public feels compelled to speak.
All right. And we had some cards turned in that I'll read after the public comment period, but if anybody from the public wishes to come forward and speak, you're welcome to come forward. I'm sorry? Yeah, you have up to 3 minutes to speak. Yes, ma'am.
First of all, the mayor did say 3 different generations before he knew about this, and Jeff did. I remember Jeff said he had to open a road to Shoe Creek when it's being developed, where Locals is. He wasn't going to open that up. It's usually just a closed-in little neighborhood. But that had to get done to let Shoe Creek have another entrance, so to come to our neighborhood to go to the light on Wax. Are you aware of that? Straight? You have to open it? Okay. So now we're being told that you and Jeff knew also we were always going to have a 2-lane, but it was going to go out of our neighborhood. I was not aware of that when I bought it. I didn't want to have a drive-through neighborhood. I wanted, like the neighbor said, we can walk around and feel safe. And I do feel safe. But you have a street that comes through from one end to the other. We're looking at getting robbed and an easy way for people to get out. I mean, I left New Orleans to come here and feel safe. Don't change things for us that live here. And it's mostly older people who live in my neighborhood. So even though you might stop the 4-lane, open a 2-lane, which they need, is going to bring more traffic. I think just one street, like you have right now in front of where y'all live, is all we need to have an exit for them, not a throughway from Hooper to Wax. Do you understand what I'm asking you to do? Be sensible and only make one road, one lane, and keep all the traffic, like you're talking about, to come through, keep it away from us. This is a residential neighborhood, they've been living for 40 years, just like we were hoping to live that long in our neighborhood. But you open up to 2 lanes, we got people coming from all over here. And that's the sheriff what he thinks about that.
No, let me make sure you understand, 'cause you're saying a 1-lane roadway and a 2-lane road. When we say 2 lanes, that means 1 lane each way.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that's
But
2
we
lanes.
don't need that. We don't need that on their side. They only have one
But
lane.
when you build a road, you have to have 2 lanes.
I know, but I'm saying, well, they really have 2 lanes, but we don't have a neutral ground between. You know, we have, they don't need that. It would stop, if you have that big, and you have more people coming through. Like you said, we want 7,000 cars in front of your house.
All right, so.
We're trying to make it a simple.
Yeah, so I think there's some nomenclature issues. When we say 1 or 2 lanes, a roadway, just a neighborhood road is a 2-lane road.
With no neutral lane.
Yeah, so any connection that I would support would be just simply to connect Huntley to the back of you on a single 2-lane road with sidewalks. And
Right, that would be fine. But anything wide with a neutral ground, we're looking at more traffic coming.
No, we're not talking about connecting. That's what this, I think we all had the same consensus.
Yes.
Nobody up here supports that.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hey, Tara Harris, 14278 Wax Road. I want to thank each one of you for you listening to us. And we just moved in August 31st. 2 weeks later, DOTD met me in my yard and told me they were going to widen the road. So you can imagine how upset I was. Not too long after that, I saw on the news where Senator Bodie White and the mayor were on the news, and they were talking about 30 to 40,000 vehicles a day going down Sullivan Road. That is very frightening if you're going to do an extension from Hooper Road through our neighborhood down Wax Road. The only thing that also upset me during that conversation is that it was really benefiting people in Livingston Parish and St. Helena, Sullivan Road. So this Wax Road extension, I see more people come from Livingston Parish just cutting right on through our neighborhood to get to Hooper Road, to get to the interstate. If you would, each one of you, I'm imploring you to please go to our neighborhood, come stand on the front steps of my house and look at the distance from the road. Literally, maybe to that back pillar at the most. And you're looking at the possibility of 7,000 vehicles a day coming when I'm sitting in my living room. What is going to protect my house and the house of my neighbors from when these cars go off the road and go right into the house? So I'm imploring you to find an alternative. And I certainly agree that Huntley, they need an alternative. I mean, that's going to be a nightmare. Why not? The other thing is drainage. You know, you're building a new roadway. Is the roadway going to be above our homes? In 15, 16, it didn't flood. When you start adding more construction, what is it going to do for the drainage? So I'm asking you, and also on a personal note, I mean, we moved from West Baton Rouge from a rural community, and I loved it. I always wanted to live in a community where you had your neighbors, you have walk paths, you have biking paths, and I've only been there since August 31st, and these people here are absolutely the best. And believe it or not, I can actually tell you their names. I mean, we walk every evening, and I love the fact that our neighbors wave at each other, speak to each other, look out. I even know the dogs' names, okay? So it's not just us that are using these bike paths and these sidewalks. Do you realize there's people in our community that are having a running club? I mean, they are running through our streets. What are they going to do with all of the new traffic? We have people from other neighborhoods that come and walk. I mean, I know my time's up, but people are utilizing that, and the more traffic is going to put a higher risk for everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Donnie Fusler, I think I still live on Overwood Drive. A great conversation, and I'm all for a discussion, But it is worth noting that as of today, we are 2 weeks away from the election. Bare minimum, this council is going to see 2 new council members, hands down, potentially 4. Any other alternatives, decisions, anything concerning this should wait for the new council to have a say-so in, and let it be the people that Central will see to elect to sit up here. So like I said, minimum, you're getting 2, but there is a possibility of a new majority of the council. Thank you.
Vote for something different?
Well, I'm saying any alternatives or any other projects, this council should not be the one that makes that decision when we're so close to a new council coming in.
We didn't really make a decision. We just
No, but we're talking of alternatives. We have until November 1st to submit something. If you do it after that, what have you. What I'm saying is it needs to wait until after November 1st. And any alternatives or new decisions need to wait on the new council. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak?
Kathy Caraway, 14113 Huntley Avenue. Yeah, I'm one of those Huntley Place residents. I emailed all of y'all. I hope you all read it. I appreciate the input I've gotten from some of y'all tonight about the importance of us having another exit to our subdivision, because once Sullivan Road is complete, our light is gone. To get out, we'll have to turn right and U-turn at Wax and Sullivan. Can you imagine having to U-turn at that intersection? Or if we're coming north on Sullivan, we'll have to J-turn around Sparkle to get into our subdivision. The other thing is we've got 70 houses in our neighborhood. Then we have the 20 apartments in the front of our neighborhood that front Sullivan Road. So that's 90 families that currently only have one way in and one way out. School buses. The school buses cannot turn around in our subdivision. They literally have to go to the back, pick up the last child, and then back the bus up down the street till they get to that connecting road to then be able to pull out. If we have a connector, they'll be able to come through our subdivision and go out and get out the Wax and Sullivan light. So I understand where these people are coming from. I understand not wanting to do the Wax Road extension anymore, but we need an alternative. And this extension was supposed to be our alternative for the last 12 years. Because I have talked to DOTD, I have talked to every administration since the master plan came out. And they all said, wait till the extension gets here and you'll get your connection. So I just urge each one of y'all to think about the safety of the residents in our subdivision. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to speak?
Good evening. I'm a little short. So my name is Lisa Brochard. I live at 12822 Pirates Alley. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for listening to us, getting our answers that we've asked for. We really appreciate it. We do want to see your needs met as well. I think our whole group does. I just want to respectfully ask that you, and thank you to Representative Ivy too as well, but I just want to respectfully ask that you do write a unanimous letter, whatever it does take, to DOTD to make this a local decision. I think we've been pretty obvious in, I think, our asks, and I think you guys as well. So thank you.
Roger Caraway, 14113 Huntley Avenue. I just want to kind of touch on what she said earlier about the school buses and everything else. Realize that when Sullivan is built and the light's gone, those buses go back and forth between Huntley and Central Woods. So it goes to garbage truck, mail carrier, UPS, FedEx, back and forth. All of that's gone. So they all have to U-turn now or J-turn. School buses, all of them. Traffic will get bad. Safety will be worse. The suggestion about the 600-foot connection, that would be the best connection. I realize that there's a resident back there who is not even a part of our subdivision, except when it serves its purpose to be so. Otherwise, His house isn't even really in our subdivision. It was built before we're out as a separate parcel. But that is the best route. That's the least expensive route. Even if you were to take Marlin across to where if the road were built, you'd have to build a bridge or put in drainage or whatever. This easy 600-foot route would be very simple. It would be very cost effective, and I appreciate you considering that.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Hi there, good evening. My name is Robbie Bird, 12868 Pirates Alley. First off, I'd like to thank Councilman Evans for supporting us getting this on the agenda for discussion this evening, as well as Councilwoman Wells for doing some research, and Representative Ivy for showing up for us twice in a row. A couple of things I think it is very clear we are asking to oppose Highway 64 as it is currently written. Clearly, we've got some new neighbors we're meeting this evening that do need an additional exit. I think you found support on our side of that as well. The other thing I want to draw attention to is it seems as though you've tried to research what is Highway 64 or the state project that we were notified about, H014919. When a project is that difficult to follow, something doesn't seem to be quite right. So I'd like to draw attention to that and ask for all of you to oppose the project as it's currently written. I believe all of us in Central can find an alternative recommendation to provide our neighbors on Huntley the exit they need as well. And again, thank you for your time.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak?
Hi, Keith Morvan, 14264 Wax Road. Here's a drawing that we got from DOTD. I think every one of us has spoken to DOTD. Well, they told us they would not move forward with anything without your approval, is what they told us. So you guys have some say in this thing, just to let you know. My house flooded, not at Wax Road, but I was living in Woodstock in 2016. And my concern is this a floodplain or not? You know, they want to build this road through here. But is that a floodplain or not a floodplain? I'm not an engineer, so I don't know. But my concern is if we overbuild this area, is this a floodplain? Are we going to stop flooding? Also, I'm here as a spokesperson for my next door neighbor. She's 88 years old. She walks from here to the mayor, get her mail every day. And also to be an advocate for the small children that go to that daycare center right across the street. To have a state highway come through 6 feet from where these kids are playing at is unthinkable. It's like the highway has to go or the daycare has to go. I can't see both of them. But that's really all I have to say. I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak?
Hi, my name is Philip Bird of the 12868 Pirates Alley in the Central Square neighborhood. We have no opposition with keeping our small little road connecting with our neighbors behind us. But, Tara, you don't have to worry about your house getting run into by a car, because if they do a standard thoroughfare with 2 lanes, one going one way, one going the other, they're going to have to take out a minimum of 8 houses, possibly 12. Everybody that got the info from DOTD, that's why they're surveying. They say, oh, maybe 2, maybe 4. If they just do a proper 2-lane thoroughfare, you're going to take out already the bike lanes, the sidewalks, and the homes just to get it pushed through. I've went through our community. We have 58 homes in our community. 7 are still unoccupied. And I'd like to put this to the council that all of us do oppose this. And they did make it very hard to find, because the only thing we could find was H014919. So I have plenty of these. I'm going to pass them out to, one for everybody. But thank you for your time. Any questions? Oh, I'd like it to be on record, please.
If you would hand that to me, and we'll make sure that's part of the record for this meeting. Thank you very much. All right, anyone else from the public wish to speak? Okay. At this time, I will read, and some may be duplicative, but I'll read everyone's an opponent: Tara Harris, Barry Ivy, T. Email, and John L. Perez. Robin Arnold, Peggy Biggs, Kristen Fontenot, Debbie Offner, Lisa Broussard, Philip Byrd, and lastly, Robbie Byrd. So we'll go back to you, council. Any discussion? Councilmember Roy?
I think if we get unanimous consent, can we pass a resolution showing our opposition to this bill tonight?
We could, if we get unanimous consent. I'll make a
resolution.
Or how about this? Because I actually started working on capital outlay today and I hadn't gotten here. I just won't submit the request for November 1st. How about that?
That sounds good, Mayor, thank you.
Or I will submit an alternative request.
Yeah, yeah.
That's next Tuesday. So I've got to work on all this anyway in the next week.
All right, any other discussion on this item, council? All right, we'll move along to new business. One, introduction of the following item of public hearing to be held at the November 22nd, 2022 council meeting. An ordinance to enact a fee schedule for off-site drainage assessments and provide for related matters by council members McKinney and Evans. 6, reports and presentations. 1, mayor's report and presentations.
All right, thank you. And not trying to beat a dead horse here, but going back to this issue, I think this is, being around for many, many years in city government, I think this is actually one of the first times that we've actually had two neighborhoods want connectivity with each other. Because usually it's a fight. Nobody wants connectivity. So to see two neighborhoods actually agreeing to connectivity is great. You know, I think that might be a first. And that's good. Just to give a couple updates, council, and many of you know already, I thank you for the appropriation of the funds to buy the Duval property that you appropriated for our city center, city hall area, and we did sign the papers last Thursday. So we are now the owners of the property on Sullivan Road for our city center. Of course, those of y'all may not know, it's across from the school board where Laura's Jewelry and Capelli's and the Duval's property. It was a little, I told somebody it was a little emotional. The Duvals, Jay and Ray, and their wives, Ruby and Ruth, were very, very happy that the city purchased that property. It's just been in their family for generations. And they wanted it to go to a civic use. And just, they were very emotional that, you know, they knew it was going to go to a civic use and not for just somebody to turn it into a commercial shopping center or something. So they were very happy. I got a good history lesson from them of, you know, when they were kids, you know, almost 70 years ago, in that front yard is where they played croquet. All the kids would come out and in the street, and how they used to own the property all the way down to Wax Road. You know, it was kind of all in the Duval family and how it's been divided up over the years. So I thank you all for that. Also, on November 10th, will be the city's Veterans Day program that we have every year. That will be at the middle school, intermediate school complex on Sullivan Road in the cafeteria. If you've never been, please come out. It is just a great program to honor all of our veterans. It's a good community event. So that'll be at 6 o'clock on November 10th. Don't forget, because we're kind of canceling some council meetings coming up here, we will have our Christmas parade as always. I think it's December 3rd, the first Saturday of the month. So you'll have those activities coming up too. The elf run's coming up in a couple of weeks as well, if any of y'all are interested in that. So those are my updates. I know that Ron Erickson could not be here tonight, council. He emailed all of y'all his report. Chief was unable to get his report prepared. He had to go herd some cattle this afternoon. So he asked that we hold his report till next. So you're still living in the country out here when you got cows on Grinnell Springs Road. You know. All right, so we'll go ahead and let Matt come up and give our report.
Feels good to stand up. Good evening, everybody. For the month of September, the Public Works Department issued a total of 112 new work orders and completed 139. Of the 112 total work orders, 95 were generated during the month of September, and 17 were from the older backlog. Current year to date, This is a period between July 1st, 2022 and September 30th. We've had 366 total work orders. Of those total work orders, 335 are completed, which is 92%, and 31 are pending, which is 8%. For the previous fiscal year, which is fiscal year 22, we had a total of 1,523 work orders. Of all those work orders, 13 are pending, which is about 1%. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Next, item 5, distribution of the City of Central Accounts Payable Disbursement Report, Fuel Report, and deposit totals for period of September 1, 2022 through September 30, 2022. 7 other business, 1 public comment. No cards were turned in, so we'll go to item number 2, announcements. Announcements, anyone?
Early voting is at the Central Branch Library. That makes it real easy. It's really not usually a line, so you wait till election day, sometimes there's a line, but early voting, I think it's from like 8:30 in the morning to 6 in the afternoon, this entire week.
Any other announcements, anyone?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Councilmember Evans, seconded by Councilmember Lazarus.